Okay, what you're looking at are the covers of 3 books. One or two of these books you may be familiar with, or you may not. I know the Book of Wonder, a few of you may have already seen the movie, or you might have read the book and you've already viewed the movie. Another book that is really popular with kids and teenagers is this book by Kwame Alexander called The Crossover. Okay? And then there's another little sweet book called Just Like Jackie. You may be wondering, okay, well, Michelle, so what do these 3 book covers have in common? All 3 of these books fall under the genre of realistic fiction. Well, what is realistic fiction? Realistic fiction is a story. It's a story that's made up. The story has characters, it has settings, it has events, but the key is they're all fake, okay, and made up in the author's imagination. But even though they're fake, they could actually really happen in real life, okay? So it's a story that could happen to real people. Realistic fiction is a story that could actually happen to real people. Characteristics of realistic fiction: the setting's real, the characters are people, there's a problem in the story, and there's also a realistic solution in the story, okay? The author does not use words such as I, me, or my when telling the story, okay? And because this is a fictional story, authors usually write realistic fiction to entertain us as the reader. Okay, their goal is to, create a story or a character that we, the reader, can connect or relate to. Okay, and a couple of other examples of realistic fiction outside of the 3 that I've chosen here that you might be familiar with is the book Friendle by Andrew Clements, the book Double Fudge by Judy Blume. There's a Boy in the Girl's Bathroom by Louis Sachar. And another one that Louis Sachar wrote is Dogs Don't Tell Jokes. You may have read that one before. And that will fall under realistic fiction as well. So what we're going to do today, next we're going to view a video. Just another little overview of what realistic fiction is. And then we are going to practice deciding if we can tell if something's real or fake. Okay? So let's get ready.
Hi, this is your friendly library lady. Today we are going to be talking about genre. Genre is a French word that means type or kind. And in the library, we can have genre fiction and genre nonfiction. Today, we will be learning about a fictional genre called realistic fiction. Think about these words. Realistic is like real, and fiction are stories, so these are stories that could happen in real life. They seem true to life, but the stories come from the author's imagination. Here are some more characteristics of realistic fiction. The setting is of the world as we know it. You won't find any magical schools, but a school similar to the one you attend. The stories are believable. You can imagine yourself as a character in the story. Everyday modern language is used. Let's face it, you won't hear, "The lady doth protest too much," or "Golly gee willikers." The problems in the stories are the ones we encounter every day. They could deal with families, school, growing up, in nature. And the characters solve their own problems. The characters are human. If there are magical creatures, ghosts or aliens, it's not realistic fiction. And there's talking cats and dogs, not here too. So let's look at a realistic fiction book. In A Week in the Woods by Andrew Clements, we have a boy going on a 5th grade field trip. Have you ever gone on one? But during this trip, he gets mad at his teacher and gets lost. Again, has this ever happened to you? Finally, using his brains, he figures out how to find his class. So remember, realistic fiction are stories that you can picture yourself in. Any questions?
Okay, so now that you have a pretty good idea of the characteristics of realistic fiction, okay, let's look at one or two scenarios, okay? And I want you to just listen to my thinking. And my whole goal is to determine whether this scenario is the real deal, right? Is it realistic fiction or not? Okay? So, here we go. It says, the two brothers jumped from bed to bed, squealing with delight as they landed on the soft mattresses. Their parents, exhausted after a hard day at work, began yelling commands into the room. Stop jumping and get to bed. You won't be able to wake up for school tomorrow, their mother said, exasperated. Exasperated means she was just be over herself, right? She was just so tired of repeating the same thing, right? This is your final warning, threatened their father. One more peep out of that room and you'll both have no TV or computer for a week. Suddenly, the room went quiet. 5 seconds later, a tiny voice said, "Peep," and a wave of giggles spread through the house. Now, let's think about this. Remember, I told you earlier that we look for certain characteristics to help us to know if it's a realistic fiction or not, right? Is there a setting that's real? Are the characters people? Is there a problem in the story? And does the author eliminate the use of the word I, me, or my when they're telling the story, right? And realistic fiction stories are stories that we can really kind of connect to, and it makes us think, oh, well, you know what, that's happened to me before. And so when I say that, immediately I'm connecting to this scenario, because all I can think of is times in the past when I was a little girl and I had cousins over and we were up late, and but there was no jumping on the bed. I've never done that before, but where my parents were, like, it's time for you guys to go to bed, this and that and the third, right? And so I'm looking at this, and the setting appears to be real. We know that it's at someone's home in their bedroom. I can just imagine two brothers, together in there. They share a room together, and they're having fun, and they're jumping. So this seems realistic. The setting seems real. The characters are people. The problem is they're jumping on the bed. They're staying up late. Mom has told them several times to stop it, right? Because they have to go to school tomorrow. And then Dad steps in. And it's like, okay, this is your final warning. So to me, this seems like something that could actually happen to someone, right? Especially this last part, when they're told, I don't want to hear another peep, and then someone tries to be funny and says peep, right? And then you just start giggling, and you're probably throwing yourself back on the bed because you think it's so funny, right? So in my opinion, all of the characteristics of realistic fiction are checked off with this. So this, to me, would be an example of realistic fiction. Let's look at scenario number 2. I'm going to read it, and then I want you to think about it and come up with whether you feel it is real or not. Danny came home from school, upset that he didn't do well on his math test. As he plopped down on the couch, his pug came bouncing over. "At least you had a good day," Danny said as he scratched behind Chip's ears. "I studied for hours and still couldn't ace the test." "Actually, my day wasn't so great," replied Chip. "Mom left me out in the yard too long, so I started barking my head off. Then when she finally let me in, she scolded me." Yeah, it's tough being a dog, huh? Danny asked his pal. About as tough as being a kid, Chip said as he curled up to Danny. Now, again, I want you to think about this particular scenario. I'm going to give you a minute or so. Think about the characteristics of realistic fiction. If you said that this was not an example of realistic fiction, you are absolutely correct. Because we know that in realistic fiction, the characters are people. Now, we do have a character in here, Danny, right? Who came home from school. He's a person. But we have Chip in here, the talking dog. And remember, realistic, meaning it's something that could possibly really happen. And so we know that Chip, the dog here, replying, "My day wasn't so great. Mom left me out in the yard too long, so I started barking my head off." That's a dead giveaway that this particular scenario would not fall under realistic fiction. Okay, so what you guys are going to do next is you are going to have included in your course, there's going to be 3 more scenarios. Here's one here. You're going to get your own. You're going to get 3 more scenarios, and you are going to determine whether it's realistic or not. And you are going to record your answers in the text box that's going to be provided. So you're going to just number it 3, 4, and 5. Okay? And you're going to put yes or no. All right? So again, as you guys are reading your scenarios here, I want you to go back and look at the anchor charts that I have included in the course for today to help you. All right? So, realistic fiction. Tomorrow, we are going to be reading a short little story, and we are going to be practicing a little bit more, okay? So, once you finish, I want you to make sure that you go back and you check your answers, okay? And that's going to springboard us into tomorrow with a little game that we're going to play just to kind of review a little bit more, okay?